And welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
The weekly live show? Wow.
It's the one.
It's the
One and
one
only.
only. Yes. I guess that's why I'm thinking also of another famous starship captain who once said, wherever our mission takes us, we will try to have a little fun along the way.
Now, did that Star Trek captain have a weekly live show?
No, he didn't.
Maybe they had a weekly live captain's log. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Mattu.
I hope it was more than weekly. And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, and one of us is actually a real doctor.
We'll leave it to you to determine who that might be. On this week's episode of Life Support Live, we're talking about cultural context inspired by the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery. We're kind of getting caught up here. We missed a few episodes. But inspired by the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, we're talking about themes from Star Trek and our own lives where the cultural context is everything. What's your favorite episode that has involved culture and characters seeing things differently because of their cultural background? Let us know in the comments below. But before we get to that, Larry.
Or to the comments to the side.
Or to the comments to the side, or above, or I don't know.
Wherever you keep your comments.
Don't keep your comments to yourselves. I think that's the main thing. Larry, what is this adventure of this enterprise that we're on of Star Trek exploration of Life Support Live? What is this thing?
What is this thing called Life Support? Hey, everybody. Happy New Year, everyone, by the way, and happy holidays. Hope you're all surviving, because if you weren't, then you wouldn't be with us today. So, yay, that's something. What are we doing? I can't believe we started this. This will be, a couple months will be 2 years at this. My gosh.
Yeah, I know.
2 years at this pandemic life and 2 years doing what we're doing to get through it and live long and prosper. But Ali and I are here. Life Support Live is, going boldly through uncertain times, where we geek out on some Star Trek every week. At the same time, we take a theme from recent shows, from the whole franchise, and examine it for some daily life, some mental health, if you will, but also just something to make life a little easier, a little more productive. Right. And we have a lot of fun along the way. And I have a lot of fun and learn a lot from everybody there in our Lifers community. So if you have not yet, say hello, join in the chat, sound off.
Thank you, Larry. That is a very good description of what we're doing. So this
I've done this once or twice.
We've got through this a few times by now. So what we like to do here at the top of the show is we open up the briefing room. This is the part of the show where we are taking one theme and exploring it through the Star Trek canon. And this week's theme is
Show 78, can you believe it?
Okay. Yes, we are on 78. And
we're going to be spinning very fast. Okay.
The episode that kind of inspired this one is episode 7, if I'm right, of Star Trek Discovery, season 4.
407, for those of you, avataring at home.
Ooh, Larry, I think you just became a Cylon.
What?
You just started sounding very robotic.
By your suggestion. Okay.
I think the DMA has just got to you, Larry.
Wait, is it that or
probably section 31 is.
Okay. Are you talking about something that's still going?
It's still going on, Larry. Let me bring you back in on Skype and let's see if that.
Strange. Okay.
It's very strange. I do not understand you.
Talking like that.
Okay, hold on, Larry. Hold on. I'm gonna bring you back in. Sorry, folks, for the technical difficulties. Let's see if we can. Charlotte says, I think Ali's the only one who's hearing Robot Larry. Okay, well. It's a problem if I can't understand my co-host. Let's see if I can bring Larry back in. Let's see.
That's a little throwback there for everybody who misses the blue S.
Soon. All right. Hello, Larry.
Hi, and I'm back large again.
No, now I don't hear you at all.
What is going on?
Are you muted, Larry?
Oh, I'm not
on
muted.
Your end?
No,
you're not muted. Cool.
We were just talking a minute.
We
talked
stuff.
For 15 minutes.
Very compelling live stream right now. Let's see. Let's see what I've got in my toolbox here and what is available for me to mess around with. Okay, let's see. I'm hearing your sound come
I'm
in.
going to try different
but I'm
things.
not.
We'll see.
I mean,
I'll keep trying
it's
on my
showing
end
your
too, and
sound
we'll
come
see
in,
what's
but it's
going
not.
on. Are you hearing me at all? This is
Fun times. I think Larry, they hear
now
you.
you've gone. Now I don't hear
I
you.
don't hear you. So that's great.
And now I've got you back. Okay, I was experimenting with output.
I'm glad
here.
someone is hearing. Larry, why don't you share your thoughts on episode 7 of Star Trek Discovery a little bit while I'm trying to rejigger
That's
the
interesting.
subspace frequencies.
Okay, so our audio is still on vacation. That's what happened here. Okay. Hey, everybody. So everybody's answering in. This will be a good chance for me to pretend like I'm actually keeping up in the chat anyway. Yes. Thank you, Rose. It's our first of 2022. Hey, cultural context. So everybody, we were looking out. Prodigy has come back. They're taking this hiatus. Here's a mini K3, everybody. They are not taking this Discovery break to let Prodigy have a spotlight because that wasn't the original plan. They're doing it because the pandemic is still affecting post-production efficiency. They actually weren't quite ready to release. You're pursing your lips there, Ali. Are you back? Are you still? Are we back where we were? Are you better?
Larry, I'm working on it.
Okay, I hear you just fine. Just so you know,
I
I've
think
never
I might
had a
have
issue hearing
a
you.
temporary solution here, which
Okay.
is going to be
okay. And I hate to be on tech. Not I'm trying to
I think this might work. Okay, Larry, go ahead and talk. I hear you.
Okay. So are we back to normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. As long as people are hearing me, something funky.
Somebody said both fine now. We hear me. It looks like everybody's okay now. Whatever.
Everyone else is fine. As long as you all hear us, we hear each other. I think we're fine.
Okay. Brother. Okay.
Okay, so Larry, this is inspired.
Anyway. Yes, so this is Discovery. It's the last Discovery episode before its break.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And we decided that there was kind of we're calling it cultural context, but there was a double whammy application of this.
Yeah, this is probably,
Ollie, what are we talking about here this morning? What can
That's
you say?
my trick, Larry. I'm the one who gets to do that. So this is, honestly, this is probably one of my, the last 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 4 have been really highlights for me, just in terms of the themes that they bring up. But you're absolutely right. There's, cultural context was playing out in 2 ways here in this episode. And so the image I already put up was here.
In your opinion.
In my opinion. The image right here, this is, I don't want to call them the Federation Council, but this is the council of people that the Federation has brought together. There are a lot of, there's some member planets are in here, and there's a lot of organizations that are not part of the Federation. We see the Ferengi are represented, Cardassians are represented. Larry, there's some new species, but also some returning ones that we...
Everybody but the Klingons, apparently, which is...
Yeah! Where does Klingons go?
I don't know. They're off hunting tribbles or something. I don't know. Post-burn. Notice them conspicuous by their absence. But still, and a lot of people geeked out totally on this episode, but that's not our point today, aside from that's what I was talking about.
The line that is inspiring our episode really comes from this exchange where this group of Alpha and Beta Quadrant, I think there's some Beta Quadrant representation here, they really come together to talk about what to do with the DMA. I always want to say DNA, so writers, please don't make it sound so similar next time. But there's a line, this comes from Michael Burnham, where she says, we can't judge their motives based on our cultural context. And they're speaking to species 10C, the species that is responsible for the DMA. That line is beautiful because it is something that we do all the time as humans. I think it's very applicable to our modern day life. But Larry, that is not the only theme, or not the only place where that line has merit in this episode. We also see the story of Zora, specifically a little bit of a measure of a man situation we have over here, although very different stakes and very different context here. Again, I don't want to put my TNG cultural context here, but there is a discussion happening about Zora's consciousness, self-awareness, and their sentience.
It was like a whole new moment in Star Trek. Never before had we ever seen a group talking to a computer, one of whom was very suspicious, and the computer remaining sane and level-headed and cool.
It's not very TOS.
And non-aggressive, yes. Imagine if Kirk had talked to Landru or M5 or something and they'd say, "All righty, yes, I understand what you're saying. Ah, I can see why you would say that. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand, but let me offer this in response.
Please.
All right, well, if you're suspicious, here's a button. Just kill me if you get worried."
Well, it was I always enjoy a good oh my gosh, the computer's a threat. Oh no, I'm just so biased by watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like there's so many movies in which, and so many stories in which that's subverted. One of my favorite examples is did you ever see the movie Moon, Larry, with Sam Rockwell? Oh my gosh, go check. Oh, it's the movie is great. There's a robot. The robot is voiced by Kevin Spacey, so I think that kind of ruins everything. Every movie Kevin Spacey is in now is kind of ruined.
Well, at least he's not on camera if he's only the voice.
No, he's only a robot. There's that. But the movie really plays on that expectation you have that the robot is going to be it's going to be a iRobot situation. We're going to have things are going to go bad. But I love when that's subverted. And here it's not a surprise where Zora's journey is going, because this entity has been very protective of the crew. And what I love about the episode before is really about Zora's anxiety about whether or not I don't know what their gender identification is, but whether or not they are going to be able to help the crew. So that story is playing out. So cultural context here is, and we see it with our officers, particularly with our engineer right over here. It's like,
well, is he an engineer or is he a scientist? It's like he's
that's a good question.
Source.
Yeah, that's a good question. But
Sport
he's kind of like, Zora, I don't know about you. I don't know if I can trust you.
But I just love how they keep having this intellectual discussion, this very factual, level-headed, it's almost like a counseling session, and that no one tries to go to any kind of an emotional level. It's all just very being honest, use the I word. Or whatever. What's the thing? It's like one long counseling section where everybody it's like a multi or 1 against 6 there or whatever it is. So,
well, what's really cool about that, Larry, is I think it's again our scientific advisor who was on your panel last year at Comic-Con.
Aaron?
Yeah, Aaron has really done a fantastic job here in so many ways with season 3 and 4 of Discovery. I know she was only brought on season 3, right? Or was she brought on season 2?
She may have been partway through 2. I'm trying to think.
I think season 3 was the first one where she was really there from the beginning of the whole season. But anyways, she's done a really great job here, not only with the AI, and there's some great references to cognitive science in episode 6, but with episode 7 here, looking at AI and its sentience. If and when we reach this point, it's really going to be about how much does the AI understand that it exists, and you're going to get to a point where it might be very difficult to know if the AI truly knows it exists and it feels, or it's very good at simulating that.
Right.
And then at that point, you have to ask the question: does it matter? Does it matter if the AI bless you, is simulating this, or is actually experiencing these ideas, these thoughts, these feelings, and is aware of themselves? And they kind of do this in episode 7 in a way that is really well done. Like I love that our good holographic doctor here, our therapist doctor, says we're doing this with complete transparency. We're not hiding this. We're going to do this in front of everyone. There's so many great ways in which this episode is exploring cultural context.
Is he there holographically, or is he live this time?
Is he? I assumed
one episode they made a big deal about him. He's there for 10 minutes and he's got another call. So,
but I assume he's just a complete hologram, like he's a holographic life form.
Oh no, he's real.
He's real?
He's real. It's just that one he bought.
Well, holographic life forms can be real too.
Oh, you're showing your showing your hollowism there, but okay.
You're showing your hollowism. Larry, this whole time I thought he's like the doctor. He's real? I mean, like,
am I
meat blood?
They met
meat
him
bag?
when they first. He's sitting in the chair in when they first come aboard, and he's interrogating people. He's interrogating Georgiou even at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's not sitting there poking around trying to disable his emitters or anything.
I just okay, maybe the chat.
He comes in when they're distantly from Earth, or from not from Earth, from they're distant from Operation HQ.
Yeah, yeah.
When they're off on a mission, and he bops in he says, "I've only got 10 minutes for you, Culber." So Hugh, whatever. And he was holographically being in there, but he's not a holographic creature. He's for real. But he's also apparently a trained psychologist, the way he interrogates Culber.
Right. He's
waiting to hear your reaction to all that. I guess we'll get into that at some other time.
Wow. Okay, we'll have to we'll have to have a whole.
I mean, am I wrong, people?
No, you might. Well, one of us is, and that's what I'm trying to figure out here.
Photonics.
Photons be free. # photons be free. Well, okay, Larry, whatever the situation is, someone is going to tell us what's going on. Okay, it looks like you're right. Charlotte says he's not.
I never stopped to think about it, so yeah.
Yeah, Charlotte says he's not a hollow himself. Okay. Well, I just and Charlotte also says, "I love you, Ali, but you're wrong in this case."
You're loved, but you're wrong. Okay.
I'm happy to be wrong. I like being wrong because that means.
Does that alter your perception of the theme you were about to launch?
No, because I just assumed that in this future we've got a lot of sentient, free hologram life forms.
Holograms? What is David Cronenberg?
All right. Larry, back to our theme here. So we both really love this episode, and we wanted to use this episode as a launch pad for a larger conversation of times in Star Trek where the culture has been everything. The cultural context changes the way you understand the situation, understand the person, their motivations, what's happening here. And we still don't know what the cultural context is here of species 10C, right? 10C, right?
Yeah, I think Scott noticed this, but I was like, wait, what happened to who was 10A through 10A through B, whatever?
Good opportunity for a short trek there.
7Z. What? I love when they jump in the middle of a classification.
7Z was a really great insectoid-based species. They are the progenitors of I don't know What are those cicadas of cicadas? They
you're
are
gonna launch
sentient
from
cicadas.
that limb, you ought to be able to get to the end of it.
I need more coffee, but first coffee, Larry. To quote Janeway here in the new
You need
episode of
a-
Star Trek
Going to
Prodigy.
need a bigger mug. Okay. Not to cross streams.
I like it. It's a good one. Okay, so let's go in, Larry. We got a lot of Star Trek to talk about here.
I'm willing. Go.
Yeah.
No, this episode, you do on. I mean, I was interested because on one hand, it was like, oh look, they're having a whole discussion about nature of life here in one scene, and they drag in everybody who's not at the station on the vote is in this scene having this conversation. So.
Yeah.
You know, they loaded up the deck there, but the idea that at some point she's going to turn and Stamets is basically, he's not a raving, AIist, but he's being prudent there. He's like, okay, you talk a good game there, Zora, but you already got us calling you by a name and not computers. So, and you kept expecting the turn, but Zora keeps her level head. Can I make a gender there?
I don't know what Zora's gender is.
She picked Zora, but then Zora might be an alien. I may be applying my cultural context to that name.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was there was never any. The longer they went, you're like, wow, if she's really going to be, a lurking alien beast here, a villain, she's doing a really good. It's doing a really good job of hiding that. And then the part that gets me, and I know the line arose during the debate on how to first contact, or whether to first contact or first bomb the 10C aliens.
Yeah,
that's where the line arose that inspired this. But and I was geeking out on the aliens and the logos and everything. I was like, is there another part of the show? Oh, that's right, they were doing a Star Trek thing over there with Intelligent Life. Okay, one of those things. But one of those things gets back to the fact that the computer never turned, which made this a whole fresh experience. And then they totally take it on its own. They do what I try to tell people to do, if we are wise enough to do it, is totally get out of the ruts of get out of your paradigm and look at something in a new way, because that's how you can see. They totally remove themselves from the AI or not, and just say, well, the AI rules apply to an AI, an artificial construct, but we're going to say you're a life form, you want to join Starfleet, and now you're bound by a whole new paradigm and a whole new set of rules, like you can be disciplined. You be rewarded and disciplined, not feared as a thing. Why does everything we don't understand get called a thing? So
I don't know if you know this, Larry, but
that's a McCoy line.
The unknown is our business.
Oh,
I don't know if you knew that.
I thought Risk was, but okay.
Oh shoot, Risk. Right.
Monopoly. Sorry.
Risk.
Okay.
Okay. Let's actually, Larry.
You hearkened me back to that McCoy line.
Oh, I did. I love to hearken. I love a good hearken.
Hearkening, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the whole thing being a debate about, we got to go find him. Oh, wait, that's B story when the crew's missing. Instead of being a whole debate about AI or not, evil or good, they totally turned it on its ear and backed up and said, oh, okay, you're a life form. You want to join Starfleet, which I don't think anybody saw coming, but it was very satisfying.
So, yes, it was very satisfying. And to gush about this episode a little bit more, I love that we learned that there's a Federation law against sentient life being used on a Federation starship.
Being embedded within this. Yeah.
Yes, this has been a long criticism I've had of Star Trek. Is we get to the Next Generation and Data's the only sentient android in like the entire galaxy, really. And I know we meet Lore, and then Data tries to have a child, blah, 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 blah. I know. But given the technological advances...
And they do it all again with the Doctor and the EMH.
Yeah, and then the Doctor. But then also that like Data accidentally creates sentient AI life or Geordi does does Pulaski? Who gives the order to create a villain that can defeat Data in
Data.
Who
he's not giving an order, he's just creating his game paradigm.
Yeah, is it Geordi or is it Pulaski? Who gives that? Who tells
it was Data.
Data?
Data was doing his own, maybe Geordi, but I thought it was
Because
Data.
someone says make a villain that can defeat Data or outsmart Data or something like
Mhm.
that. Anyways, they accidentally Geordi creates Moriarty. Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte is just answering all the questions, and for once, I am right on that one.
I
So,
don't have my iPad open, or I could be answering these.
well, that would be cheating. You need to use your mind. It's real, Larry. Use it.
Not after 56 years, but go ahead.
Not after the last 2 years, my friend. We're all just we're turning into whatever species that goo alien is in Star Trek Prodigy. That's what I feel like sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I love that we learned there's a prohibition against using sentient AI, because this is something that Star Trek, for until recently, until the recent series, hasn't really explored a lot about where is all the AI life, the software-based life forms. And now we're learning that they exist, they're out there, and we're not going to enslave them on a starship, that they have their own rights and liberties and freedoms. So I love that that's there. And if I might, just for a moment, compare this to another large franchise here. If you think about how AI are treated in Star Wars too much, it's quite horrific. That they're all sentient, but they're also all enslaved in some way. And some of them aren't, and some droids in Star Wars have independence, but many of them do not have that. I think the Han Solo movie is the most horrifying account of all of this. So I'm glad to see Star Trek is doing a better job at exploring AI now, because it hasn't historically, and other science fiction has sometimes taken very dark turns with the implications of how they depict AI.
Well, yes, and I've got to say this season also arises after the Picard first season, and another go through with a look at AI and what we're doing with it, and all the implications with some more modern takes on it. But the thing about Discovery now is they're 900 years in the future, 800 years in the future, and even season 1 Picard is way, way, way back in their distance, and they've all been through this rip up of society from the burn. Whatever had happened in 600-700 years, then nearly 200 years ago, they'd had the burn, and it ripped up so much of normal society, including the makeup of the Federation and the way the local galaxy got along. So, that was disruptive enough. And some of these old, long-time paradigm, it was the eugenics war on Earth that colored how the Federation dealt with, genetic engineering and eugenics and all that. And up at, it was like a blank, it was like a total, I need a new kidney. Oh, no, don't take a pill. Don't do anything. I'm sorry. Oh, no, you were tinkered with so you could be a more functional person in the womb. Oh, prenatal genetic, enhancement or whatever. Oh, no, that's illegal too. And Bashir was after he was born. But anyway, that whole thing, this discussion about AI, I keep going back to thinking about how the discussion about genetic engineering was a thing. Like, one thing happened in history and it affected centuries of thought and process. And not only on Earth, but that Earth brought that to the Federation's coloring as well. And so now this thing, and we don't know yet what if there are any, if there's some repercussions in local time, like Picard season 2 and 3, what's going to be the repercussions of is it just going to be, it's a thing now? Or is there going to be some new profound look at AI and the sense and how they were going along? And then we had the thunderclap of Federation Day that year, of the Mars attack, and then this reaction away from it, and now this whiplash reaction back to normal, but that still has to settle, and we haven't seen how the reaction back has settled, or if it's a thing at all, and they just blithely go along and ignore it in other directions. So, so there's that. So now it's almost like we're applying that to, really, how many centuries has there been has the AI ban on ships, which makes sense, unless you're going to step back and really get, highfalutin and look at it the way they took Zora in the end, which was, okay, she's a life form and here's where we are. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but I was just thinking it was fascinating. I felt like I was having an echo of the whole genetic engineering debate, but I was also trying to view it through the lens of this is so far. It's not that we're so far ahead. It's like there's been this 700 years of unfilled history that it's going to take a while to get at 10 episodes a year or 12
Yeah,
episodes a year.
yeah, totally. And that's actually a lot of the fun of Star Trek Discovery now. Uh, and I should qualify that now in these seasons. In much the same way that we had with TNG, jumping forward just 75 years, and we were trying to fill in the gaps of, oh, what happened? What happened with the Klingons? Oh, looks like nothing much changed with the Romulans here. Oh, look, Ferengi, what's going on here? Andorians, I guess they're just in hibernation now. It's nice to see to have big questions to answer. And I was a little. Yeah. I was a little concerned about having so many series in so many different places, and there's a large concentration of them in that TNG to post.
And the animateds are the only ones doing anything fun. Okay.
Yeah. There's, we got Picard over here. We're gonna have Strange New Worlds right over here. We got the animated series, both of them kind of doing their own thing, and now we got Discovery's way out over here. But I do like these kind of questions and opportunities to explore and do very different things. It's a lot of fun. Larry, when we started this show, we had Discovery. I know, way back. We had just finished.
I'm trying to remember.
We had just finished season 1 of Star Trek Picard, and most of the shows had yet to come. We have a bounty of Star Trek now. There's so much good stuff here. So I very much agree with you here. I do want to. Can we jump into some
back
of
to our back to our theme?
Yeah. Let's get back to our theme here, and I think let's just kind of get the most obvious example out of our way here. There's probably 2 very obvious examples here.
Well, there's a whole trope of when you talk about cultural context means we're dealing with someone or something else, and we have our own blinders about what we think something is meant to be, or when this action is taken or this route of thought is taken. Here's what it means. And it could be something totally different from the other side. It could be benign. It could be adversarial. But we have to remember that we're not all the same.
We're not all the same. It could be about beliefs.
The whole thing about DMA was about first contact. It's the old Star Trek thing of, are they just signaling us, or is this is this a hostile act, or are they just saying hello?
Or a Vulcan hello is kind of what we're getting over here. But is this species 10C's way of exploring? And I mean, that's something we've seen in Star Trek many times, is some species explore with warp drives. Some species bring other species to the center of the galaxy so they can say hi as a floating head and learn all about you, and then send you back and erase all knowledge of how you got here.
Yeah, it's like there's one trope is the hostile so we're gonna start throwing down examples. You just did there.
Let's throw it down. I just threw one down. Let's do it.
You did there.
This is a
you
throwdown.
went to the nth degree with that.
Yes, I did.
But the Calamarain, is that what that is? No, that's Alan.
Calamarain.
I know. Wow. No, I mean one of these is a trope. It's the misunderstood monster we go back to the Horta. You go back to
yes.
I think I sent you one from early TNG there in the bell jar, right?
Yes, you did. Let me find this.
It's a long-standing, especially original series in Next Gen, and I guess everything. It's the misunderstood monster. It's we encounter something that maybe even be hostile, but we don't realize that we poked it, and it was just sitting there minding its own business, and now it's defending its children, if it's the Horta, or in this case, if you can ever work your imagery again.
Are you talking about
the show that otherwise never gets talked about except for one line?
Are you talking about this one?
Yes.
Yes.
So the Valaran, otherwise known as the microbrain, otherwise known as the thing that said called humans ugly bags of mostly water, uh, or mostly bags of ugly water, which I like on a anyway. But that's the whole, it's the whole thing. Oh, they're just misunderstood, and we blundered into this confrontation, and we back out. Okay, fine. There's that one, and there's also what. Um, oh, I started to say it. There's another we were talking about it a second ago. Anyway, but that's a whole thing. You could do a whole show about those cases. And so I was debating whether we should just like say, okay, that's a given. The old, I'm a misunderstood monster, but I'm not really a monster trope is out there. But I mean, we can include them because I think that's cultural. Or the microbrains thing was it's not about protecting kids; it's protecting its own environment to survive in. So, or you've got the nanites.
Yep.
In evolution, which was like they weren't even an intelligent species until like you created us, and now you're afraid of us. It's kind of like reverse Frankenstein. They're like, hey, calm down, settle down.
Yes.
You're catching up with the chat.
Oh, Larry, you're not supposed to see that.
That's two. I guess we've been on too long a break, and I'm catching up on the thing.
Oh my gosh, no, I'm just favoriting a bunch of the comments so we're able to kind of tend to
but
go back.
The oldest one, I didn't know what to do to capture, convey it. But the oldest example is, I think, going back to the first production episode, which was the 10th one shown. But it's the first thing they shot after the pilots were sold, which was the original series one I threw at you.
Oh, I love it when you throw a little original series at me, Larry.
There we go. It's a different angle. It's Baylock, but the whole point of this episode was, which I remember thinking at the time, this is so slow. And then when I realized it was the first production show, I'm like, oh, they're taking 10 minutes to do everything that later they would do in one line, But when they finally do meet Baylock, they've been through this trauma of this huge, physically huge ship that they think is about to slice and dice them and take them hostage and drag them back to its home base. And they're totally powerless. And they find out the whole time that it's maybe also the first trope. Oh, I know what it was. The first trope of what you were talking about there with the nth degree, which is the whole, hi, we're going to study you. And that's our way of saying hello. We're going to drag you back to our home. Or we're just going to, you think you're being tortured and about to die, but it's just our way of saying hello. And we're making sure that you're not bad guys. And that's what the case in Corbomite maneuver is. He finally has to bluff them into thinking that they're powerful enough to resist, but then he sees that, we see your true colors. And that whole thing, computer, look at our, scan our data banks and see, scan our computers and our records, and you'll see what kind of people we really are. I mean, how many times have you heard a captain say that kind of line? And that's, that's like that. That's like cultural context at the nth degree when it's about to get deadly. Whoa, back from the brink, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But that's all, to me, this is feeling like it's all aspects of what you're getting at here, right?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's a good pull. It's not a go-to example like Devil in the Dark. I mean, obviously Devil in the Dark, yes, and that's a problem with episodes like Devil in the Dark is they're so good that we can use them for like 20 different themes on Live Support Live, which I think we probably have. And the other one, just to get out of the way, because the chat has a lot of good examples we didn't think of, Larry. But the other one, just to get out of the way, is obviously Darmok. Obviously here, and this is the Melanie in the chat brought this up as well. Shaka when the walls fell, of course. And so here we see there's a lot of aspects to culture.
You can't translate your way out of that one. You have to have the context.
Yeah. It's nice to see Lower Decks pick up on Darmok, but here we see one aspect of culture which is really important, which is language. You can only when I learned about this, I think this must have been college, but a professor of mine said, you can only experience thoughts in the language you have. And so if you don't have language to express an emotion or idea, you don't experience that thought. And this speaks to how much the way we experience emotions, the way we understand what's happening in our body, all of this is through the prism of language. And if you do not have language referring to certain emotions, you don't experience that emotion. It's really fascinating, Jim. That this is how it works. But Darmok is a wonderful example of how language can lead to understanding. It can also lead to misunderstanding or no understanding or frustration that results as a result of the communication gap there. So of course, yes, Darmok is an example we're going to bring up.
It's so important there are no words.
Larry and Ali, Saturday on Life Support Live.
There are no words, or you wish there were no words. No, that's interesting. Without language, you can't have that complete emotion. That's that complete thought.
It's not,
which is, I was just going to say, one of the things when I do tours, here's a whiplash moment. One of the things when I do tours, is not until the early 1809 was the year that a lot of people know that sequoia is a thing. There's trees named after him, and if you're from the South Midwest, carpets. But a lot of people don't know exactly what it was, why sequoia is famous. Sequoia was a Cherokee, but he was the first Native American, who came up with a written alphabet for his language. So you were talking about language. I mean, there are no deep thoughts and emotions until you have words. The next step to that might be being able to write versus an oral tradition only. And after that point, a lot of and then that kind of thing spread among the other tribes. But the Cherokees, by another 100 years, by the time they were really good and ready to be subjugated, they had written language, written laws, governments, and yada yada, and they were removed from the nice word, Trail of Tears and all that from the Southeast, Jackson and the Trail of Tears. But by the time they were resettled in Oklahoma, there was a very white term called the 5 civilized tribes, but the ones that were the primary original tribes, they all had written laws and governments and elections and public works and, universities and things. And that's why they were called the 5 civilized tribes, because they weren't savages. But a chunk of that was the fact that they had written language and could mock the Western civilization they saw. It still didn't do them any good. But anyway, but to me, it sounds like that kind of a cultural leap is like the next leap over what we were just talking about, which is like language or words and language versus now to be able to communicate and write it down and preserve it and pass it on is like the next leap.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Trail of Tears, as Charlotte says, aka genocide. That actually ties to my counselor's log today.
Slow motion genocide.
And one of the things I'm gonna be talking about in the counselor's log here. So yes, was gonna talk about Star Trek. Okay, let's go through some of these other examples here, Larry. The other one that kind of came up in our discussion, like very very quickly after Horta and after we were talking about the Horta, we were talking about the prophets and specifically.
You mean the wormhole building aliens?
Yeah, well, so even that is an example where the Federation says these are wormhole aliens, and the Bajorans are like, no, these are our gods, and all of this. So right, even there is a cultural context to understanding these life forms and what they mean, right? But what I think is really cool when Benjamin Sisko first meets the prophets in Emissary, time. We don't know yet in Star Trek at that point in the timeline that time is the fire in which we burn. We don't know that yet. But what we do learn is that was a joke, Larry. You're supposed to laugh.
Sorry, I was reading the chat. Sorry. Okay. I guess you caught me.
So what we learn is
besides the lost all joke, it couldn't have been too big a loss. Okay.
The prophets, the wormhole aliens, they experience life in a non-linear way. They experience time in a non-linear way. And another thing I remember learning in school that really opened my mind up to culture is time is very much culturally based. How we experience time, like when things start. What are expectations around punctuality? What are expectations around how much time we spend together? Just like space, there are cultural expectations around space. Just recently, who mentioned it in the comments here? Yeah, Charlotte was talking about the real life cultural context example from my Christmas vacation, going from a state with mask and vaccine mandates leading to certain social expectations around COVID mitigation to a state with no mandates, low vaccine rates, leading to very different social norms. So space is a cultural based context, how much space we can have between each other, how much space is considered rude, how much space is considered friendly. That is a cultural based context. What Charlotte is talking about is very much one way in which this is playing out right now, like with COVID and safety and what is considered safe. I was just talking to someone who came from Toronto. He was visiting family in Toronto. And he told me that in the community that he was coming from, they did a pretty good job mitigating the first wave of COVID, the original strain. And because of Canadian immigration policies, there wasn't the Delta strain didn't really hit them too hard. And so you went from people who were very much being very cautious to really opening up because you had high rates of vaccinations. Delta didn't really come through. And so you had a community that went from very cautious to very open. And now Omicron was hitting them hard, and they were wholly just not prepared for that. And it's kind of set everyone into a spiral. So sense of space and safety has changed over time and very recently there. So the prophets experience time in a very different way. And when you go to different parts of the world and you might have your own expectations, well, like it's 9 o'clock, why aren't we getting started here? Getting started in another culture might mean half an hour later. It's like when you have a party, Larry. Let me ask you this question. You're hosting a party, you tell everyone it starts at 7. When you're expecting people to come? So hold on, Larry. The chat says they can't hear you, which is true of me as well. I can't. Um, can you guys hear me? No sound, Larry. Can people hear? Larry, did you just mute yourself? I see it says my Skype says you're muted
Oh, I
on your
did.
end. Ah,
I did.
okay.
Okay. I've
Okay.
had a whole lot of sirens going by, and I've been trying to spare
Oh,
everybody.
okay. So Larry, you were muted when I asked you, like, you're hosting a party at 7 o'clock. When do people come up? Take it away, Larry.
Okay, sorry about that. Take two.
Take two.
No, I remember this. For years, we did a big annual party, and if we said 7 o'clock, I wanted to grumble about the people that were there right at 7. But what really got
Right.
me going was the people that would come 5, 10 minutes early, or even 15, 20 minutes early. And I was like, if I wanted you here at 7:40 or 6:47, I would have said 6:47 on the invitation.
Right.
And then
Right.
they come early and they don't, and then they're not helping. They just want to sit there and wait for people to show up. I had 2 people that did that all the time, and I just wanted to smack them. But they were good friends, so I couldn't do that. But no, what I was saying also, so yeah, I mean, when I go, I try to go about if there's a party at 7, unless I have a reason not to be, I try to get there at 7:15 or 7:30 or something. And it's not about being fashionably late. It's just I just feel like I'm giving the host a break in case things are running a little later.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
what I was saying, the other end of this cultural time thing, also, apart from like a party when people get there, is this happened whenever we'd be at a con in Europe that was fan run, and the fans would want to take the organizing, the committee and their friends would want to take the guests out or take Janet and I out or whatever to dinner one of the nights. But I'm like, oh, cool, sure. This was especially in Germany and Austria and the Czech Republic and France and Italy. Okay, continental Europe. It was let's go to dinner. Okay, fine. We're there. 5 hours later, sitting around the table. I mean, it's awesome. It's a memory, but in the moment, it was like I have got 3 hours of work I've got to do before I go to bed tonight, guys. Because then I'm going, okay, that's American. They would never dare do that. But I'm also a convention guest, whether it's work from home or it's stuff I have to do for the panels tomorrow, for the con tomorrow. It's like, this is stuff I had this much time and we just flew for 10 hours, remember? And, our time clock is wacky. Plus I've got an hour or two of work to do before tomorrow for you guys. But you can't say that. You've got to sit there and enjoy the 5 hours of, because that's what they're doing. And they're showing you and you don't want to say anything. But that's another time when cultural time, after a while I learned to just think, okay, we're going to dinner at 7. Are we going to get back before 1?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And it's not even like we're all sitting around drinking. It's not like we're sitting in a bar, like we went to eat for an hour or two, and now we're going to go night clubbing for 3 hours. It's not that. It's you're sitting around the dinner table, still eating for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Bread, the dessert is coming.
No, it's. I asked that example because I knew you probably had a lot of examples from that, because this is one of the funny, weird things about living in America is there is a lot of diversity around expectations for get-togethers, eating, and socializing. There is a ton of diversity, just state to state, people to people, age. All of these things. Like, I think about this a lot with when I was teaching introductory psychology, and I would meet with other professors, and a lot of my colleagues who are older would complain about the communication they got from their students. That there's no salutation, there's no dear Professor so and so or Doctor so and so, blah blah blah. People would just kind of get into it. And one of the things I remember sharing is the cultural context for communication, that most of our undergrad students have grown up in a cultural context where communication, it's a constant stream. The communication has no beginning, middle, and end. There's no letter that you open and it says, "Dear Ali, it has been months since I've written you." No, because you have a constant flow of text. That communication does not end. It's continuous. And so that is a very different way of thinking about how you communicate with other people. And it has implications for how people write. And I see that as such a constant frustration among teachers with how students communicate with them. But it's because communication, the culture around communication has changed dramatically in a very short amount of time. So all of this stuff, it plays out all the time. Larry, for me, you tell me 7, I'm probably going to show up at 7:30. That's my. I feel like I'm, but I'm sure there are people where, like, You show up at 7:30, you've already messed up my planning for this. I was going to do this, this, this. So it kind of depends. And if someone says, I saw, Larry, you posted this week about the anniversary of Star Trek Las Vegas, the experience, and on the invitation it said black tie. So that is giving different implications of when this starts, how to dress, what are implications of all of that. It's so this stuff gets complicated, and the prophets show that well, I think, in that first episode of Emissary. Is they don't understand.
Okay.
They don't. Yeah, getting back to Star Trek, they don't understand how Sisko experiences time at all. And there's a lot of analogies, a lot of storytelling, a lot of examples that they have to get from the Sisko to get any place of common framework.
Mm-hmm. I know. The cultural thing. Now you've got me going. I mentioned this before. It was so funny when we came to LA, when we moved here, and it was right at the end of Next Generation when we moved. We weren't on vacation visiting for my book. We were here, and it was Next Gen had just ended, and there was a goodbye. There was a get together. It was supposed to be everybody. It was mainly the crew and like lesser cast, like stand-ins and people, but the main cast was invited, but by that time nobody was there. They were all busy. But there were like 100, 150 people in a backyard, and people had said, somebody had said that I was interviewing, by the way, there's a big cast and crew finale wrap-up show barbecue tonight. And I was like, really? In LA? Really? Oh, that's cool. So I tell Janet, we go. I didn't know a ton of people, but I had met enough people by then, and I found the familiar faces, Jamie Horan was the one that invited me, who had several characters and did other things. Anyway, the actor, but wound up being the temporal guy on Enterprise. But we get there, and I'm sniffing the air going, that's funny, I don't smell any barbecue. Now, this is a verbal cultural context, but it's the same thing. And I'm walking around, I don't see a cooker, I don't see a smoker. And finally, I found somebody, and I said, okay, this is great, but I don't see or smell any barbecue. And the person just looked at me like blank-faced. And they're like, oh, no, there's not. It's just hamburgers and hot dogs. And I was like, oh, then why did they say it was a barbecue? And they said, because it's a barbecue. And I said, but there's no barbecue here. And that was my introduction to the whole concept, the whole West Coast. Not the Rockies. I think this is a post-Rockies thing. The whole West Coast says barbecue. Because then I had people go, and I would say, hey, if you're going to invite me to barbecue, there better be barbecue there, And people go, what are you talking? All the natives would say, what are you talking about? This was like a mission for the first couple of years we were here. First couple of decades. I said, what are you talking about? I go, if you're not going to have barbecue, don't call it a barbecue. What would you call it then? I said, a cookout. And they just look at me. It's like, that's what we called it back home. It was a cookout. Because back home, Oklahoma, Midwest, Texas, if you said you were having a barbecue, you better, by God, have some barbecue, or you're going to have a lot of pissed off people.
I totally understand that.
But I always love it when people go, oh, yeah, what would you call it then? I say a cookout. Like, there's a perfectly legitimate word we use, so we don't have this cultural context, misunderstanding. And they're like, oh, so it's a joke. But I've done that ever since. People look at me and they say, oh, Larry, we're having a cookout tonight.
I mean, this kind of stuff happens all the time. So I love.
Our chat going to chime in with me on this too.
Yeah, let's jump into a few more examples. Larry, let's talk about Enterprise here.
Well, this is the one that came to mind. There's lots of them, obviously, but Vulcans and humans and all kinds of things, and the dog smells and all of that. But the Cretaceans, it's kind of the humorous one. But you could even say trip misunderstanding. You could. In DS9 was a case with the females being aggressive and O'Brien being uncomfortable with that. But this is a case where Porthos peed on a tree and it offended the Cretaceans. And then, by the way, when I had accidentally left myself muted,
yeah,
your audio audio. Maybe you were trying to switch and find what was wrong, but you got tinnier.
Yeah.
You sound like
Yeah.
you're in can. Anyway.
It's you are hearing if I go back here, you should be back
Or it's like
to
you
it should
went
be
to a
back
different microphone or something. I don't know.
Now you should be fine. They still heard everything well. Enterprise has a lot of good examples. This one is great.
That was the DNA of Enterprise, because Enterprise was about first contacts and getting out
over and yeah. There were
that was a
yeah.
yeah.
And the thing I wanted to connect with Enterprise was the Xindi. The Xindi storyline here, I think, really does map well to what we're seeing with 10C. And the Xindi storyline is big and complicated. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there. But there's more diversity within the Xindi than humans thought, than Starfleet really thought, when it comes to the humanoids and the avians and the avians were the ones that were wiped out, right? But the reptiles, the insectoids, all the what were the underwater ones?
The
aquatics.
The aquatics. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is something that I think Star Trek often doesn't do well with culture, is they paint culture in this monolith that all Klingons believe this thing, all humans believe this thing, all Andorians are this way. And we have a few exceptions to that. I think we do. Star Trek Discovery, I think, started to show us, didn't get a chance to explore it in too much detail, but they started to explore how there's a lot of diversity within Klingons and different tribes and all of that. And I think one of the best examples we have of the houses. Yeah. I think this moment in I don't have the image for it, but when Cassidy is telling Benjamin, like, join us at Vix, and he says, I can't go there. It's a lie. Our people were not welcome there in Las Vegas at that time, referring to black people, referring to segregation, and talking about how this is not showing history the way it was. Cassidy's response there saying, but it's showing how history should have been. And what we know this happened. This is a place for us to get together and enjoy each other, support each other during this wartime. We're seeing there a little bit more of intersectionality, which I know is a complicated term, but all it means is you can't really rip apart the experience of Sisko being male and being a Starfleet officer and being black and like all of these things shape who he is in much the same way that all of these other things shape who Cassidy is. And these things interact with each other, and that leads to a lot of diversity within groups of people. So I think that's Star Trek has done that better more recently, where we do see more diversity within groups of people. But historically, that's something that Star Trek struggled with a bit more. It was nice to see, at least with the Xindi storyline, that not all the Xindi saw humans the same way.
Right. I mean, some of that is a function of just production budget. Like, oh, look, you wanted to have a whole new makeup look for the Klingons, and we'll just say they're all from the different, For 1 minute, we're talking about, oh, they're all cardboard cutout villains and they all look alike, and there's got to be more, whether they have a Fu Manchu or they have a goatee. That's not enough. That's like individual hair, guys. That can be a little more diverse. To the point of saying we've got really, I laugh about the biker Tellarites now because they've gotten into the thing of having the tusk, and they just look rougher and tougher than the fluffy hair and the eye socket and pig snout Tellarites. But it's just a fact of life. But I mean, a lot of that you can cover if you're a backgrounder, if you're a canonista, you can just say, oh, it's species diversity. But in a backhanded way, it's I think there's more thought. I think since that original blundering, I think now people go, oh, let's show the, it started with the Ferengi. The Ferengi stereotype was all the TNG thing, and then Quark first, followed by Rom's the total misfit. Quark's the uber Ferengi, and Worf was the same way. Worf was the uber Klingon who made all the normal Klingons that were almost stereotypical look diverse compared to Worf being the uber Klingon. And it almost happened with Quark and the Ferengi that way. And then we kind of got that with Shran and the Andorian. We still have a long way to go with fleshing out Andorians, but much less.
Yeah, the Ferengi might be the best example. And we have DS9 to thank for that. Absolutely. A fun example, Larry, we've brought up this one before in a past episode, but this is that episode of Lower Decks.
Takes that trope, that whole concept we've been talking about, and makes a joke out of it. But it's there nonetheless. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole episode you're thinking
to an absurd extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking the crew's on trial, and then there is that moment that you highlighted here. This is not a trial.
That's a place of being suspended in midair. That's an honor. That's not a punishment. Yeah.
It's
wait a minute. What about dropping us in the eel pool? Yeah.
It's really a wonderful moment. I love that one. And then you also highlighted this one, Larry. This is from Voyager, In the Flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And this is related to species 8472.
Well, and we were talking about 8472 adapting human form and going to all these elaborate lengths to recreate Starfleet in a human environment and all this stuff, and to understand the way we're going to invade you, but we're going to do it real smartly. So we're going to, and it's taking the form. They go, oh, maybe not. I mean, now that I think about it, that's another trope too. It's the aliens that don't look like us. It's Galaxy Quest also. It's like, whether it's for invasion or just understanding or just ease of dealing in a Class M environment, they take human form, which is also much easier on a makeup
budget.
On a budget, yeah, on visual effects. But they take human form to get to know us for whatever reason, all the way from the Organians, right, to 8472, to you name it, the Kelvins, the invading Kelvins, not the people living.
Not the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, with dead Kirk dads. But that's another trope. It's like the others are trying to understand us, and so they try to overcome the cultural content, whether it's nefarious or not, or it's benign. But I had not thought about that until because I was thinking the In the Flesh was just, here they are trying to do that, and we're trying to understand them and realize that does it help us to understand them? But because by the end of the episode, they do come to an agreement. They do agree to have some kind of a contact. They have made friends.
Yeah. And
whether it'll be what it made me sad. I was reading the last scene. What made me sad was they never went back to 8472 again.
No.
Because the idea of it being an ally against the Borg was never utilized again after that. But
yeah. Maybe they kind of found peace and agreed to not bother each other
and just stayed there. And but I mean, they were never there was still conflict between the Federation, between Voyager's bunch and Borg.
Yes.
Because the finale is all about that, and the Borg Queen and all that. But I guess 8472 was too easy. It's kind of like what happened to the Organians. Like, we still had Klingon conflicts in Cold War. Where were the Organians then? But it never got to that point, I guess. But anyway.
We had one more example that we thought about, Larry, and this comes from Star Trek Picard.
I must have done a lot of thought last night I forgot about.
You really did. So
I was maybe somebody else will come up with one. But in Picard, it's only the 10 episodes. But I was racking my brain because they weren't really about contacting other planets. It was all very internal and aside from the the mechanical serpents at the end, it was it was not all. But then I went, you know what? If there was one bit of cultural clash, it might have been Elnor and his being bound to a cause out of his nunnery there, But then that clashes with Picard going, no, I don't care what kind of a conflict we don't immediately walk up and cut people's heads off. We at least try to talk first. And he does that dressing down of Elnor. And I thought, well, it's not all of Romulus, but for this cultural segment of Romulus,
I will
a lot.
think
so? Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Romulan there's two things I really enjoyed about Star Trek Picard, and well, two big things that stick out related to this theme. One is learning more about the Romulan culture post the destruction of Romulus. That was really cool to learn. The other thing I really enjoy is everything related to the XPs. Everything. I love that entire storyline. I think Zahir asked earlier about is there cultural diversity among AIs, and I think there absolutely
There has
there absolutely is.
that's
And
that's such a broad category. There has to be an origin story, an origin point, and a perspective just to start with. So there's
yeah, I mean, even right now, and Zahir, I'm going to tie this to XPs and Star Trek Picard, but even right now, if you look at the AI that we have right now, it's very very simple AI, and it's really based on data sets that we provide it, and its ability to form associations and predictions and things like that. But the current AI that we have, it's all based on the data that goes into it, and I think if you look at Zora. We did get confirmation that Zora uses the her pronoun. So
yeah.
Zora identifies as a female, so we can refer to her as her. So her whole personality and programming is based upon the data of the crew, which I think is a very beautiful statement. In last week's Life Support Live, when we did the motion picture, I think someone here mentioned how the show Discovery isn't just about discovering unknown, but discovering yourselves. And I think that moment in Discovery is so beautiful that this AI has emerged out of the love that this crew has for each other. So its data set is biased towards that. And I think every AI will have a different cultural context based upon the data that we provide it. There's a great book, Race After Technology, which I'm pointing to it. It's sitting right over there. But it's really about, if we put biased data into our algorithms, we're going to get biased algorithms and biased AI. So absolutely, there's cultural diversity here, but
Garbage out. Yeah.
Garbage in, yeah, exactly. But tying it to the XPs here, the XPs have their own culture that I don't think anyone outside of them will truly understand. That they are trying to overcome the trauma of being assimilated, but will anyone ever see them as something that's not Borg? I think it's going to take a lot of time for people to be able to trust the XPs. Maybe we'll see that in season 2 of Star Trek Picard. Probably not, because they're going in. Well, maybe the Borg Queen's in there. I don't know. Who knows? But with time, will people come to accept XPs as people who can be trustworthy? In much the same way as we saw Stamets debate with Zora, will we see that with this XP collective? I don't know. But I think that's a really cool storyline to follow, and it shows how discrimination can so easily take its roots in society. So I love. Mm-hmm. I wish Picard season 1 was just all the XP storyline. I would have loved that.
I love the XP storyline too. I just didn't appreciate the two angsty young Romulans hanging out in dark corners, pretending it was a CW show or something.
I wasn't even gonna evoke that, but that was not so. The dance or the going around that scene. It has beautiful music, beautiful score during that scene, but. Oh, page 2. Let's go through some of the examples, Larry, that our lovely community here brought up.
While you got off on that tangent, so yes,
we've got a lot of really really great examples that people have brought up. Melanie brought up the Iron Giant. Which is not Star Trek, but a great film. I Am Not a Gun, refusing to be used as a weapon. I like how Scott refers to the jellyfish in Encounter at Farpoint. We must have a name for that species besides jellyfish.
They never got a name. They weren't
really?
Native to they weren't native to the planet, so
Oh wow!
Because they were spacefaring, they got up and got out of there.
Yeah, they're like, see ya.
My mates
Uh,
rescued me.
they
Didn't
they had
weren't
a
there?
they had a
Yeah,
Q-like embrace at the end, touching
yeah.
fingers there or tentacle. Yeah, that's great. That should be a GIF right there.
Uh-huh.
Zahir mentions Klingons and humans see life and death differently.
Mhm.
So I just saw this the TNG episode, The Next Phase. I think it's what it's called. Geordi and Ro are out of phase thanks to the Romulans. And Data talks to Worf about what kind of funeral should I put together. And Worf says, Data, I'm not sad. I'm really happy right now for Geordi and Ro. They died noble deaths, honorable deaths, and they are now in Sto-vo-kor. This is something that for a Klingon is very joyous. So Zahir, your example here is right on. Culture very much informs how we view life, but also how we view death. Great example right over there. Nathaniel mentions, how about DS9's Ascension? I wrote my dissertation on regionalism and administration in France and Germany. One of the things that I came to appreciate was that the meaning of tradition is never static, but it seems to remain the same. But if it seems to remain the same, it is because of the conscious effort to stop its evolution. Let me bring it back. Orca is a product of a different cultural context, and the Bajoran society struggles to adapt to it, despite the fact that it moved on long ago.
He
Nathaniel,
took a caste system and trying to throw back to the caste system.
yeah, and Nathaniel, one of my mentors, family therapy mentor, I think I've shared this before, said families are always in a state of change. And usually when they're stuck, it's refusal to come to terms with change. So the same is true of every tradition. Absolutely, you're right on there. I think that's a
Or
great
political
comment.
culture. Yes.
Yes. Melanie says, justice, next generation. Wesley is sentenced to death for accidentally disturbing new plans when another boy threw the ball and Wesley ran to catch it and accidentally fell into a forbidden zone. I forgot about that episode, Larry.
What do you want to? Because I kept going, okay, I'm not trying to be old man on a lawn about this, but like, so why are to me, it didn't seem like if it had been a thing of like this planet was dying and every plant was sacred and you stomped on it, then I'm starting to understand where that could be, a death penalty. But the idea was, it wasn't like the plants he stepped on to catch the ball and the zone around it. It wasn't that was like so important. It was the fact that they randomly changed the forbidden zones every day. So it wasn't about the thing they were protecting. It was just about the fact that we have these rules and you have to pay attention every day because we're going to change the rule.
Well,
and you have to like get up and read the bulletin every day to see what or get the announcement. And he didn't do that. It's like that whole culture dealt with shifting death zones just because they had to do it. It was more about paying attention to the death zone change than it was what it was actually about. So you could even debate, like, should we be this worried about this grass? Oh yes, that grass is rare. We will die without it, and it's dying, and we're having to protect it. So yes, that's what we all agree. That's not what was going on. It was just this stupid random shifting that apparently had nothing to do with anything, except that's just the way they did things to make people pay attention and prove that you like us because you're going to pay attention and see where you could possibly.
I think the idea is good. The execution,
like a stupid early first season next gen thing.
It's early TNG. The idea of the story is interesting. The execution of the story is not so great.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But it does kind of speak to what can be considered sacred. Highly varies among cultures. Like, a simple example is if you come into my house and you don't take off your shoes, it's like it's we're gonna have an issue there, right? So it could be something as simple stuff like that. Oh, I love this comment, Charlotte. Charlotte, this comment is right on. So speaking of cultural context, Stamets comes from a pre-data culture, so it makes sense that he'd be more skeptical of Zora's intentions and sentence, whereas Kovic comes from a culture that's moved way past that, so his openness to the situation also makes sense. Whoa, why didn't we think of that? Yes, Discovery's crew.
Stamets even comes from a pre-M5 culture. M5, the Multitronic Ultimate Computer.
Oh, sure. I was thinking BMW M5s. I was like, what are we talking about here, Larry?
Talk about another cultural difference.
Yeah.
Great.
I
do not know, Kirk. I really do not know.
Charlotte, that is a brilliant point here.
Yes, it is.
Let's really look at Stamets, his world. I'm sure if Stamets jumped into the Next Generation, Geordi would be like, your ship runs on mushroom power? Like, what? Like, what's going on here?
What?
Yeah. So Zahir also mentions the outcast. I like it because he's a high-ranking officer breaking the rules, but it's a clash of cultures or Riker's self-dealing. Larry, I'm having a complete blank right now on the outcast. Which episode is
the gender show?
Oh, right.
Yeah. The gender show.
The gender show. It's
the old original series thing. You had the Nazi one, the Roman one, the gangster one. This is the gender one.
This is how far we've come from TNG to Star Trek Discovery when you look at the outcast here.
It's still a beautiful story. And a lot of people still appreciate it. But it's not the one lone wolf.
Right.
Getting by on metaphor and allegory.
Right. We're gonna we will talk about all of these things in this one episode and then never talk about it again. Melanie says when B'Elanna was coerced to rebuild sentient AI life form and she ended up destroying them. That is a fantastic episode that I cannot remember the name to. Larry, do you remember the name?
Dreadnought?
It might be Dreadnought.
Where she's underneath the thing tinkering with the AI ship bomb the whole time.
I think that's a really cool episode that it's an earlier season 1 too, I think, and people people don't talk about it. It's a great episode that gets at some of these themes of it gives me notes of, if I'm smelling notes of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield and Measure of Man in that episode. It's a great really great episode. And Nathaniel also mentioned when we were talking about cultural context, time to show up, and talking about France when you need to spend 2 to 3 more times in a restaurant. I loved my wife and I went on our honeymoon. We went to Paris, and you don't walk around with a coffee. You don't get a coffee to go. It's kind of an insult. Like food is meant to be enjoyed.
Well, and doggy bags to go boxes.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are you starving at home? It's like, no, I'm not going to waste this.
Right. And if you think about the whole culture, it's not just these little beliefs. But if you look at the whole culture, like the size of kitchens and fridges are smaller in Paris. And so you're also getting food on a more regular basis from the local market. So it's like fresher food. So all of this stuff, and you leave you leave your eggs out because they haven't been treated in the way they are in America. When eggs are washed in America, it removes a lot of the preservative or the natural preservatives that are there. So you have to refrigerate them immediately. There's these cultural contexts emerge because of the whole system around it. Yeah, everything.
Everybody comes to America and says, "Oh my God, no wonder you people are overweight." Yeah.
It's you look at glass sizes, plate sizes, all of the whole system revolves around the cultural context, and the cultural context is shaped by the whole system and the limitations and all that sort of stuff. Whew. Okay. Charlotte is on fire today, Larry, because this comment too.
Well, don't put her around. Don't put her out.
Again, I know. Again, harkening back to TNG, when Picard says to Data, "You are a culture of one," which is no less valid than the culture of a million. I felt that when it was applied to the last episode of Zorro. Oh my gosh. Yes. What a great hearkening back there.
It echoes to me what he says in Insurrection to the Admiral about how many. It's just a few dozen people, and he's like, well, how many does it make it enough?
How many does it take before it's wrong, Admiral?
That's a higher up on the spectrum, and having these conversations to Data or to Zora, the population of one is, and there's other examples in Trek too. Now, if you stop and think about it,
yeah,
because that's part of the thing. The uniqueness of life is, well, this is a cool thing to explore. It's also a thing when that rams up against cultural and legal issues.
Yeah,
it's one thing to
and speaking of Insurrection, that kind of ties to the Trail of Tears, the genocide of Indigenous Americans that we were talking about. I think Insurrection is one story. I called it an episode. One story that kind of speaks. Yeah, it's 2 episodes.
It's a 2-parter. Come on.
Larry, I think we're caught up on
Insurrection 1, Insurrection 2. Come on, see how easy that flows off.
Scott's talking about bags of milk, which is something you see in Canada. You see, they don't have the jugs of milk that we have in America, but they do have the bags of milk.
Like soft bags that.
Yeah, you buy the bags from the store and then you put them in this canister.
Do they not leak?
Yes. Yes, they do. I don't know if it's like that elsewhere in the United Kingdom. I
remember seeing bags, but now it's been close to 10 years since I've been in the UK or Germany.
And I don't want to evoke, before people get mad at me, I don't want to evoke that Canada's in the United Kingdom. But what's the larger organization called, Larry? The
Commonwealth?
The Commonwealth, yes. I don't know if it's like that in other parts of the Commonwealth, if they also have bags of milk, but maybe our chat
can. The Barbados that just became totally independent of...
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Just don't say that in Barbados. But other than that, it's still... Queen's still on the stamps in Canada and Australia, I think, and New Zealand.
Oh my gosh. I think we're caught up on all the examples, Larry, unless there's an example you want to share. Scott says they have them in Germany too, as of the last time I was there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's move forward here, Larry, to our second segment. 90 minutes in. Let's go into the counselor's log. This is the part of the show where we do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the psychology that we're talking about. And today, what I wanted to do is give 3 very different but real life examples.
It's not like that in other parts.
Yeah, Louis says no, it's not like that in other parts of the Commonwealth. Today, what I want to do is I want to give 3 very different examples in which real life cultural context matters. So one of the things I'm very much a behavioral therapist. My background is in behavioral psychology and behavioral treatments of things like anxiety. And there's 2 very effective behavioral treatments that have been developed for depression as well as substance use. There's a treatment for depression called behavioral activation, which is all about trying to identify what are the little daily traps that might make you feel worse, and what are the little daily things that actually can help you to feel better. And I shouldn't call this a treatment, but it's a way of approaching substance use. It's called motivational interviewing, which is really trying to help people to understand what is a substance use doing for you and what problems is it actually causing. Well, one of the things when psychologists try to apply these treatments towards Indigenous Americans, because Indigenous Americans have very higher than other cultural groups rates of depression and substance use. There's actually very high rates of substance use in a lot of the Native nations, and a lot of these treatments failed. These treatments that were highly shown to be effective in other populations were not working here. And then when people who actually had a lot more knowledge and experience of working with Indigenous Americans and the different tribes, when they integrated ideas of genocide, of the history of what has happened to Indigenous Americans, and wrap these treatments around really being proud of your identity, of your history, of your heritage, then the treatment started working. And so this is just one example of you can make something that seems to be effective for certain groups of people, but if you don't respond to the unique cultural context in which someone lives and their history, and the history of their community and how that history is playing out today, your treatment's going to fail. It's not going to work at all. This is true of language, of the language the treatment's made available in. What are the language of the forms that people have to fill out? Are you? This is a common thing as a parent of a young child. I run into, Larry. If you set up a meeting time between 5 to 7 p.m., I'm not going to make it, because that's like I'm trying to get my daughter fed, changed, and put in bed. Like, the cultural context for parents with young kids at that time, it's like nothing's going to happen at that time, So you have to incorporate an understanding of history as well as the current context in order to have any chance of these things working. I've got two more examples that are very different, but also factor into cultural context here. Mm-hmm. Do you know where the term "don't mess with Texas" comes from, Larry?
It's from the
you
litter
might
campaign.
know.
It's the litter campaign.
Yes, yeah. So
because they came out with "Don't Mess with Texas" as a litter campaign, and in Oklahoma, as usual, copied them, and Oklahoma had "Don't lay that trash on Oklahoma." But it was the anti-littering.
Yeah. So this, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, which I'm sure is our global audience outside of America, "Don't mess with Texas" has become this bumper sticker. It's become this slogan, and the idea, now it's like, hey, like you don't mess with Texans. Like, we are our own kind of thing. But for a long time, Texas was having this litter problem, and they tried a bunch of different messaging to try to get people to no longer litter.
It's almost as if there was a population of selfish people that were making it bad for everybody else.
Yeah, right.
Not thinking of the group, thinking only of themselves.
Not thinking of the greater good here.
It was only about littering, but yes.
And not thinking of the needs of the many. And so
that thing.
Texan leaders tried a lot of different messaging, and it was all failing. And then someone got the idea of, why don't we tap into these values that a lot of Texans have? Like, a lot of Texas has this kind of independence, we're different than the rest of the country spirit that has been there forever, to the point where they've cut themselves out from the power grid of other states. Like, they are very independent. We are doing our own thing. And when they created a messaging that was wrapped in that cultural context of "don't mess with Texas, don't litter," it all changed. And the litter problem really subsided. It really came down. So that's an example of, if you respond.
Great marketing. Oh no, great.
It was brilliant marketing, because it was tapping into these cultural values. I've got one more example that I want to share, Larry, which is a similar example, and this was the anti-smoking campaign. So once the public knew about smoking and its health problems and all of that sort of stuff, now the tobacco industry in the United States knew for a long time and hid it. But once the public started to catch wind of this, there was many efforts to try to reduce smoking. And some of it was a shock campaign, like show pictures of lungs of people who are smokers. There was this famous commercial in the United States where they had an older woman who had a tracheotomy. Is that what it's called? I'm blanking. But she was smoking through here. And there's a lot of these shock efforts, and they weren't really working. Then there was the Truth campaign. And this campaign was all focused on getting teenagers to understand how the marketing of smoking worked and rallying around this teenager value of don't mess with me, don't try to tell me what to think, what to do, like I know better. And once that marketing campaign really latched onto this value of don't mess with me, like don't try to tell me that you know
Don't
better.
BS me. Yeah.
Yes, don't BS me. That actually worked. That actually worked with teenagers and young adults. That this idea that, hey, they're trying to manipulate you, like don't listen to them, that worked until we got vaping because we kind of like lost a few. Yeah.
Oh, that's fair.
So
this is a different kind of putting materials and smoke in my lungs. It makes it all different. Yeah.
So these are just 3 examples that I wanted to share where if you don't take cultural context into play, things don't work. But when you do, things can rapidly start to change. But that takes a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding, a lot of listening. Larry, you know what I can go for right now? I would love a K3. I would love a K3 factor.
Glass of K3. This is going to be a very quick one because I was talking about cultural context. So this will be a very quick, and maybe it's a little story you've heard, but the first place my mind went to, and I think I've thought of a few more since then, but I'll keep this quick. So Star Trek IV, 1986, it's about the whales. It's a feel-good movie. It's a comedy. It's a light touch after all the Sturm and Drang of 2 and 3. And as they're making it, everything comes, they're watching the dailies. Everybody feels excited about it. It's the big change year of 1986. Star Trek IV, they get a feeling it's going to be huge. It's also the 20th anniversary. It's the first time the studio gets involved in promoting Star Trek. It's the year they finally decide how they can move the franchise forward, that it is a franchise, not just this one-off show that when everybody dies, we'll be out of it. We're going to continue the thing with the new, okay. Everything comes down, but what's another aspect, they talk about Star Trek IV being the biggest global movie up until that time. Part of the reason was, or one of the stories that came out of that, they really made a big international push for the first time to open, they do it. It's de rigueur now. Like, how many times did you read online about Star Trek 09 and all the Kelvin movies? And here's the opening in Hong Kong, and here's the opening in Mumbai, and here's the opening in, but in 86, that was still a little new, the global consciousness, not much less the global box office. So producer Harv Bennett, tells this story about being, and it's kind of when the 80s were kind of after the day after, and the Cold War was hopefully trying to, the anti-nuke movement, they were trying to melt a little bit. And there was a little bit of pre-glasnost détente there in the 80s. And they had a big gala opening for Star Trek IV in Moscow. And Harv Bennett tells this story about everybody being in him being in the theater and watching this Russian audience, with subtitles or whatever, enjoying the movie. And the thing that he was shocked and delighted by, if you can put the K3 image up.
It's coming. Here it comes.
At the very end, here it comes. Wait, that's 2. At the very end of the movie, this innocuous line when they're waiting to see, their new ship. And McCoy has this line, the bureaucratic mentality is the only constant in the universe. Harv Bennett says the thing that shocked him the most was they got to that line in Moscow and the entire place died laughing. He wasn't expecting that, but he was saying, of course, in Moscow, a crack about the bureaucratic mentality, where everything individualistic is stifled down to
this is like 1986 Moscow. Yeah. So I could totally see that line killing
Union. Right. But it's when you talk about cultural context that leaps to mind first. And he enjoyed telling that story. The audience loved the movie. I mean, they got it about, it's hard not to want to protect. Japan was the big egregious one about whale fleeting for a long time. So, because they were so maritime. So, Moscow, it wasn't political. It was a nice neutral movie at the time also to share, kind of like, the Apollo Soyuz space mission or something. It was great, but he always talked about how that was it. He was like, "Oh my God, this is like different cultural eyes see things differently, and things we say." In that case, it wasn't an unexpected, negative. It was an unexpected positive. But when you talk about this theme, that's one of the things that leaps to mind for me.
That's a really fun one. And
I heard that story.
no, I've never heard that story. I love it. I do have a question though. Do you have any idea how nuclear vessels played out with that audience? That's Charlotte
Oh,
mentions,
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
kind of, and in general, how was Chekhov seen
Of
by
course he's a
in
Ruski. Yeah. And that's the thing, though. I mean, it ought to be you ought to be able to go back and find Pravda talking about reviews of Star Trek 4. That's
Yeah.
not that.
Well, and I'm just also curious how is Chekhov seen as a character in during the Soviet Union by Russians during that time? Like, how was he viewed? Was it like, hey, look, we're represented in the future, like we are a part of it, that or was it like, oh, he's a stereotype, we don't sound anything like that? Is it a mix? Is it more complicated? It's probably more
I
complicated
I
reaction.
don't remember seeing anything off the top of my head, but my gut reaction is because the whole thing about Gene saying they partly, Chekhov is half Davy Jones monkey youth wave appeal. And supposedly it's half, oh, we should have a Soviet on the bridge. We should have a Russian on the bridge to acknowledge Soviet, blah, blah, blah. We're going to be post political here. Um, it's very much a thing that you can obviously see Chekhov's hair and everything modeled after Davy Jones. We've all done. But this whole thing about the editorial in Pravda that criticized Star Trek for not having a Russian character and being offended, that's apparently apocryphal. Like no one searching archives has ever been able to find this supposed editorial. It's starting to sound more and more like it was Gene just and Desilu's PR machine just trying to drum up some global interest in Star Trek. Like it didn't exist. But I'm going to think that afterwards, I'm going to say that if some reviewer was trying to get in good with their bosses and the political hacks, that they were going to say thanks, but no thanks. Like, oh, great. Like the Russian joke, if nothing else, how he's always bragging about Russian culture and Russian history. And, the Russians did it first, that we think is such a cute little joke. I think some reviewer would probably have gone out of their way, whether they were really offended or not, they would have been able to feign being offense, just so they could take a dig at another, bourgeois American cultural export. Don't fall for this, Russians. They're making fun of us. Now, by the 80s and by the time of Star Trek 4, I don't know. And, there's that line. Of course, what does the interrogator say? Of course, he's some kind of Rusky or something.
Yeah. There's a lot of great moments here in Star Trek 4. Let's go to our away mission here, Larry. This is the part of the show where I give you a tangible way to apply this stuff into your own life. So this one, I was thinking a lot about, and so culture is everywhere, and it's also complicated, and it can be emotional, and it can be difficult, and it's a lot. And sometimes you might not even be aware of how this stuff is playing out. This is, I think I've talked about this way early on in Life Support Live. One of our original episodes, I think, one of our first 10s, I think I talked about the fundamental attribution error. This is when you're running late, so you're driving fast, but you're driving fast because like, oh, I have this really important thing I have to get to. You see someone else driving fast and cutting people off, and they're an asshole. Like, we make very complicated explanations for our own behavior, but when it comes to other people's behavior, we label it in a non-complicated way, an internal way. Like they're that way because of who they are. We are this way because of all of these other reasons. And so that's a problem that we have when it comes to a lot of cultural situations, is like, oh, well, he's a Cardassian. Of course he's going to be racist and this and that and blah, blah, blah. When in actuality, the story might be more different than that. If we want to start unpacking Damar, we're going to have to open up some Kanar, because we'll be here for a while. There's a lot we can explore there. Sorry, I had to. Sorry.
I know.
I had to go there.
It's a low bar. Okay.
Oh, Zahir's being by Captain America here. Language. So, yes, my away mission here. So how do we do this in a very easy to apply way in which we do for away missions? Well, there's a lot of evidence now that one of the best ways to really understand the cultural context of another person is through storytelling. There's a lot of evidence now that when we hear someone else's story, their real life story, and when we also share our own stories, that is one way in which we can overcome some of the cultural barriers that might exist. And so, if you are someone who might be struggling to understand someone else's experience, you can ask something like, I have no idea what this is like for you. Can you share more about what you've experienced? Can you tell me what that was like to go through that? That's one shortcut you can have. Now, again, it's not their responsibility to educate you on, if you're talking to someone whose ancestry is of an indigenous American, it's not their responsibility to educate you on what the U.S. government has done to all the tribes of the Americas. Like, no, you have to do your own history and understanding. But what I was kind of speaking to before is all this stuff intersects with each other. Everyone has a unique experience based on their history, based on their life, based on where they live, based on their language, based on their beliefs. And the best tool we have is to understand all of that is to hear their story and to ask them to share their story. To say things like, I'd love to understand what this experience is like for you. Or you can ask something like, what do you think is behind these problems that you're going through right now? That's another great way. Sometimes people might think it's because of this larger, more spiritual thing that's behind it. Sometimes they might think it's personal. Sometimes they might think it's very scientific. Or it might be a mixture of all of that.
Or they think it's because of them.
Yeah, it might be because of that. Like, it's
into a grievance.
Asking that, or another question I really like is, what do you think could help you to overcome this? Because sometimes people might believe it's going to be, well, I just need to get my act together, or I need, my family's help, or they might believe in some type of deity, and I need to pray, I need to do this. Like, asking people these kind of questions can really help you to get a better understanding of the cultural context. And if the roles are reversed and you think someone isn't really understanding you, I love asking this question is, why do you think this is important to me? Why do you think this is important to me? It's a great way to sort of force empathy and trying to unpack what the other person believes the cultural context might be, and it opens up the conversation to talk about what culture might be. So storytelling is a great way to apply this, as well as asking that question, why do you think this is important to me? So Larry, hopefully that's simple enough. It takes a lot of work to get to a place where you trust someone to be able to ask some of these questions, but it's our way through. Speaking of asking questions, let's open up those hailing frequencies here.
You're right on top of the graphics today.
Today I'm on top of those things. Not so much usually, but today I'm here. Let's see. We've got.
Go ahead. I've got found 2 or 3 things I just want to pull out.
Oh, please go for it.
So wait a minute. Now, to say that, I should have had one of those lined up. I do like, so Nathaniel, way back at 1109, we were talking about cultural differences and things, and he was sharing how in New England liquor stores are called package stores, and he didn't understand why everybody was doing so much mailing.
So that makes me think of, in New York, we call them bodegas. In California, I think we call them liquor stores. Corner store is another name. There's a few others I'm missing here. I don't know what do they call them in Oklahoma, Larry? The store at the corner that sells a little bit of
Well,
everything.
when I grew up, we had liquor by the drink, and they were the little liquors. If you said liquor stores, that was. Oh, here's a great story. Did I tell you this one about our daughter when she was little and we were back home in Oklahoma? We'd been in California for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
The kids had grown up more, and so Janet was with Sarah, and they hadn't gone to a church service, but they were going in a Denny's or something. And they happened to be there right as the after church, the cultural norm, which was the after church mob, was all showing up for after church, like at noon, 12:15, 12:30. And they were leaving because they'd had like late breakfast or lunch. And they were standing there at the checkout plate, near the front counter as people were coming into the lobby. And Sarah is, I don't know, 8 or something, 10. And she very loudly, they're talking about where they're going to go. And they're going to go by a grocery store, a market, a 7-Eleven. Convenience store is what we would have said back home.
Convenience store, yeah.
That's what it was. It was a convenience store. Unless you didn't say like Quick Trip or 7-Eleven or the U-Totem or something. But anyway, they're standing there with all these, all the church ladies and the church guys coming in, but the church ladies all standing there taking their hairnets off and stuff. And very loudly, they're getting ready to go and they're talking about stuff. And very loudly, this 10-year-old looks at her mom and says, Mom, can we go by the liquor store? Because she's using the LA term she knows for convenience store.
Right.
And Janet told me, I wasn't there, but she told me later on that like 82 women all went, look at this 10-year-old saying, can we go get drunk? On Sunday?
Right.
Anyway, but there's a cultural context.
Well, yeah, when I lived in New York, we called them bodegas, and they sold sandwiches, and they sold foods, and they sold a bunch of stuff, but every corner had a bodega.
Right.
If I say, I'm going to go to the bodega in California, people will be like, what are you doing? Where are you going?
I literally heard that term 2 or 3 years ago for the first time.
Yeah.
Because of some show that was a New York-based show.
Yeah.
If you said bodega to me, I would think it was some kind of hippie term, either for a big reefer or it was something from, Hispanic culture or something. I don't know. There's Bodega Bay somewhere.
Oh, there is Bodega Bay. Yeah, Bodega Bay. That's not the vibe of bodegas by any means.
That's what I'm... And to me, market, here's a culture. If you said market to me, what you're calling a bodega is what I would think of. Oh, that's a back east term where everything is urbanized, and that's the little corner store. Because when I grew up, they were grocery stores or supermarkets. Supermarkets. But supermarkets became the norm. But if it was a little place, it was like the little store or the little grocery store.
Well, here's another pop quiz, Larry. What is Coca-Cola?
I was going to say that next, yes. Because I saw one of the first things of the internet was that guy doing his study with the map.
Yes.
Did you ever do that?
Yes.
Yeah, they do the whole thing about language. So is it Coke or is it pop or soda or Coke? And when I grew up, it was Coke because you had Coke Day. If you were a kid, like if you were 10 or 12 or 13 and you were just starting to figure out the opposite sex, you went on a Coke date. It's like, we're just going to get a Coke. It's cheap. No big thing. We're going to find each other, and it's cheap because we have no money, and it's very innocuous, and it's daytime. And because I would always say, so what do you call that? A soda date? Is that a pop date? What is that? Because to me, in my culture, soda was that white stuff you put in cakes to make them, whatever. And pop was fruit. Like, so there would be grape pop and orange pop. But to call Coke a pop made no sense.
Yeah,
but I knew I had cousins, and I knew people the rest of the country would say pop and soda. But you say soda to me, I'm thinking you're baking. Just like if you say barbecue to me, you better have barbecue.
Yeah. I just pulled up the data here.
But I love seeing that graph
the Northeast states and California, Arizona, and New Mexico tend to call it soda. Everywhere else in the South tends to call it Coke. And everything up above in the United States tends to call it pop. I wonder what this is like globally. Like, what do people call call it in other parts of the
You're
world.
going to assume that it's global, and it is globalized. Thank you, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola both. It is horribly globalized, but you're assuming that a chunk of the rest of the world has this decision to make. I love seeing the one-offs, though. I love seeing the places where it was like really deep south might be. It was cold drink.
Yeah, Zahir's got a good
things.
example here. In Pakistan, they call it bottle. Yes, Zahir, thank you for reminding me that. And let us know in the comments from our folks. What do you call it? If you call it something different,
Because people would interrogate me real quick and say, like we'd have this conversation and go like, what do you mean? How does that work? Because that's confusing. Coke is a brand. I go, I know. We'd say,
yeah, it's like Xerox.
You want.
Like, can you go Xerox this for me if people say that anymore?
But that's not confusing. There's not other brand. No, I want you to go Brothers it.
Yeah,
that's not.
It's like when someone says, "Can you Google this for me?" Right.
It's or here's a Kleenex. Oh no, it's a generic one.
Yeah.
No, I mean what I'm saying is back in the day, hey guys, we're gonna run out and get Cokes. What do you want? Give me a Dr. Pepper. Give me a 7-Up. I want a Sprite.
Get me a real thing. It would be the thing, right? Right.
Yeah.
That's if you want a Coke, you would say, "Get me a real thing."
No, I would say I want a Coke. People would say I want a Coke, or we'd say I want a Coke.
A Coke.
It's like you go and you have an order and somebody wants a Diet Coke. You say I want a Diet Coke and then I want a real Coke, or I want a Coke or something, just to make sure it's distinguished.
I love what Melanie says here. Want a Coke? Sure. What would you like? A Pepsi.
Yeah.
My first job was
working. Yeah.
My first job was working at a movie theater, and there would be some times where confusion would occur when someone ordered a Coke and I brought them a Coke and they're like, "No, I wanted a Sprite." Like I wanted a Coke, but I want a Sprite. And I as a Californian born and raised, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Okay.
You never came back and asked me what Coke I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's your fault. Yeah. I also want to say, this wasn't brought up in the comments, but there was a lot of discussion happening around vaping and why this has gone up in rates and all of that. I do want to point out that Julie Newmoy has done wonderful work in not only the documentary that she made about Leonard's COPD, but also trying to reduce rates of smoking and vaping now, and has been doing wonderful work with that. So if you're interested, definitely check out the wonderful stuff that Julie Nimoy is doing there. So thank you, Julie, for keeping Leonard's continuing one of his last wishes, which was really helping people to not engage in the activity that ultimately led to his death.
But yeah, years it's been like this whole generational memory lapse, amnesia about vaping versus. It's like you're still putting smoke in your lungs.
It's the same exact playbook, Larry.
And it's not water vapor. It's
the same. It's the same playbook. Instead of Joe Camel, they have sweet flavors like candy flavors and strawberry flavors of all this vaping, and it's the exact same playbook as being used. So yeah, it's a problem we need to address. Scott says, "Oh, there's an issue of mine. Do you smoke? No, just vape." Larry, any other comments you want to pull?
Sorry?
Any other comments that you want to pull?
Let me see here. Oh, Libby at 1141. We were talking about Don't Mess with Texas. And I said, I remember the Oklahoma, at the same time Oklahoma copied Texas, only they kind of like killed it, like hit it over the head. Except I remember I kept a litter bag with the thing on it, but they had a song, and it was done like 60s doo-wop, or 50s doo-wop groups, like, don't lay that trash on Oklahoma, lay that trash on Oklahoma. Anyway. So Libby chimed in at 11:41 and said, well, Arkansas's was don't litter. I just thought that was cute, Libby. Yeah.
Two more comments that I highlighted. So Melanie recently just said, the truth of Indigenous people's treatment is not taught in schools. I'd rather learn the truth from First Nations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, who is writing the history books has a huge impact on...
Well, not to have an excuse for letting them be off the hook, but as far as trust right now, yeah.
Yeah. And Zahir said another example of cultural context is betazoids. They show concept of giving thanks for food, common among humanoid cultures. Yeah, that's a great example. And we see what I like about betazoids too is we see intersectionality here with Troy. There's some betazoid customs that she absolutely engages in, like plexing. Is that a betazoid custom, or was that a different?
I think that's a psychologist's tool. I don't think that's, Loxana doesn't walk around all the time doing this. So, all right.
But there's some customs that she doesn't really care for. And so we do see diversity in how a culture is expressed between Deanna and Luoxana, which I really love.
Cam Elton didn't run around going, I plexed too much when I was a kid. That didn't happen.
Brian says, would age play a part in cultural context? Most of my coworkers are 10 to 15 years younger than me, and their pop culture references are often different than mine. Absolutely, Brian.
I would think something was wrong if their pop culture references weren't.
Yeah. I noticed this when I was teaching.
But wrong as in weird, yeah.
Like every year I taught, my references became more and more not working. And so you always have to kind of stay
it's kind of sad when you're Star Trek is so evergreen. We're kind of spoiled by it over here. But when your Green Acres references become, or your Northern Exposure references kind of become outdated. Yeah.
Well, Larry, we are at it is our beautiful theme song is playing right over here, Larry.
We didn't send you images for real quick.
Yeah.
Aside from LarryNemecek.com and all that, and Twitter, Larry Nemecek, and Larry Nemecek's Trekland, everywhere you're watching us right now is my channel. Please like and subscribe on the YouTube. But aside from all that, the last gasp chance at our holiday gift offer for Portal 47, which is 6 months for the price of 5 and a lot of freebies, is ending for sure. Final last gasp tomorrow night. So everybody, if you go to my LarryNemecek.com, there's buttons to click on and you can jump in and do that thing. And then also next weekend, in fact, after we do life support next weekend at 1:30 Pacific, I'm doing a half-hour panel in a day-long charity for the Hollywood Food Coalition, which is John Billingsley's big thing. Trek Geeks and Roddenberry podcasts are combining, and there's like tons of Star Trek actors and cast and behind-the-scenes people in their like panels all day long. But the whole thing is like a marathon for the Hollywood Food Coalition.
Very cool.
And you can got that all over. Yeah.
I love that. Folks, I'm at Ali Mattu on social. The Psych Show on YouTube is where I'm at. We want to thank our friends here, Scott, for being so active in helping us to edit and make these shows available for you all after the fact. And then also...
You stay caught up with it, Ali.
Yeah, I know. And also Jarrod, who I haven't seen in a couple of weeks, but Jarrod, who's also one of our moderators here and helps us to clean up the show after the fact as well. So thank you, Scott and Jarrod. And Larry, we are back next week. We're talking Star Trek Prodigy next week. Boy, did we have an episode. There is a lot to talk about in that episode.
All the canon nerds just freaked out last week.
I think any Star Trek fan would freak out over this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy. If you haven't seen it, folks, get caught up to date if you can. Star Trek Prodigy is really shaping up to be a lovely show here.
It's for kids, guys, gals.
It's really, and it's beautiful. It is a beautiful neat show. But until then, Larry, I cannot wait to see what comes next, and we'll be here to talk about it on Life Support Live. Until then, folks, live long and prosper.
Hey, everybody. Trek well.